He said, "Not what do I mean by how you die? I was drawn and quartered." I get it, but you were not in resistance. I would have to say one of the most powerful examples of that is that in Vietnam, that Buddhist monk that just covered himself in gas and burned himself. If you want to see a powerful teaching of non-resistance, attachment, or judgment, and completely letting go, that's pretty good. You know, a lot of the teachers of that type of wisdom teaching, the way they die, and my teachers in the past, they taught the whole day, they did their whole thing, they sat down, they left. There was no story. You know, so it's about presence, non-resistance, non-attachment. One monk continued to ask his teacher over and over again, and he says, "Oh, okay, so you're having a hard time. Here, I'll demonstrate what true presence is." He sat down and died. So that gave him a pretty good. I didn't get it. What do you mean you didn't get it? That's it. Wouldn't it be tragic if he was an idiot? What a waste. Does that address the question? Very good. These are complex subjects. Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit more about the energy body that we're creating to house consciousness after we die?
Okay. So, are you ready for this? When you learn energetic anatomy, physiology, when you start your studies of Qi, right now, most of this modality is Jing, the Qi studies. One thing you're going to learn is the yin and yang. Okay, fine. Then we talk about the 5 elements, which are the way they organize the internal organs. Then we'll talk about meridians, which is kind of like the wires that we're talking about, the things that you punch. Those are called meridians. Deeper than that are called vessels. That's your deepest energetic construct. Okay? These vessels are actually, in the beginning, an organ. It's an energetic organ. Okay? That is basically gives birth to the form and houses the consciousness. And that's called your vessel. So if you're having coordination issues, I know it's your linking vessel. I can work with that. If this is becoming distended and things aren't moving, I know it's your gullet. What's happening is your energetic structure is unraveling. You start to die long before you're dead. And there's pieces of you that just start to rot, fall apart. It's your energetic structure is the first to show and the first to go. You know? And it just starts to unravel. That's an orb. Okay? That's just holding you here now. So, we need to first know that. Conception, governing vessel, valve vessel, thrusting vessel, linking vessel, heel vessel. Those of us that have been studying this get it. Fine. That's impermanent. So, the objective is through the practice now, through the practice of sitting meditation and the cultivation of Shan, through the practice of what they call mixing, it's called Bao Yi. It's a very technical thing, where you mix and lead. Mix and lead the consciousness to the original cavity, right here. That's where it forms. And that's done through rising water to nourish the pineal gland. That actually creates a biomagnetic reaction. Now, have you ever seen a halo? You hear people that had halos? They make it like in some of the Christian traditions, they had a halo. That's the spirit embryo. You ever see a dot? Right? We have this dot, right? The Indian dot. That points to the cultivation of the spirit embryo. We talk about the third eye. That's the house of this spirit embryo. Sometimes you'll see Indians, it's funny, Indians have either a dot or a feather. And they're both right because they're both activating the pineal gland in an effort to cultivate the spirit embryo. So it's about getting the same energy from your kidneys that you use to create a baby to go up to the pineal gland to create another baby, which is a spirit embryo. Lowest form of creation is to create another rotting meat suit. The highest form of creation is to create a spirit embryo. Human embryo, not so much, there's 7 billion. Spirit embryo, kind of hard to do. Does that make sense? I gave you a drive-by on that. It would take me just to get the concept and the components. That's what we're working on. But it does, I will give you a hint, it begins with the kidneys. Because the kidneys are what are basically the gateway to the endocrine system. Okay? It's the whole endocrine system, and ultimately kidneys, ends in the pineal gland. So by cultivating Jing, kidney level, okay, and then ultimately nourishing this Qi, which will rise and feed the pineal gland. What do I mean by that? Here, I'm trying, because there's an answer, but it's a long one. Okay, the opposite of that. There's called mixing Hanli. If the head is hot and the stomach is cold, that means fire is above, water is below. The average person has a hot head, they have headaches, right? And all kinds of hypertension and heart problems and all kinds of juicy stuff, and then their guts don't work. Bowel movements aren't regular, performance isn't there, the whole thing, it's a wreck. So you have a damp, lower jaw, it's damp, cold, hot, dry, upper jaw. So, your middle ear's all dried out, can't stand, nothing works. What we need to do is we take the cool from the kidneys, bring it up to the head. We take the heat from the heart, bring it down to the stomach. So this now becomes a furnace. This is no longer hot and going through drying out the endocrine system, drying out the whole thing. So the first step is to get the water to rise, the fire to fall. Now, when the fire falls, this block of ice, basically, cold, damp, starts to heat up. The block of ice melts and then starts to steam. The steam rises and nourishes the pineal gland. That is the answer. It's just a lot harder than it sounds. Does that help a little?
You gotta crawl before you can walk.
Yeah. But that's it. It's a very specific practice, and it's a lifetime practice. And it's something that you're always working on. So, yeah, good question. Wow. All right. I think I'm done. Okay. Any last questions? We'll take one more question. I think you did great. Or did you want to do the... No, you didn't. Top ones. All right, 18 things you learned. Any last questions? Last question and we're done. Nothing? Yes, sir.
Well, I'll ask since I don't want to retire. I just found out when I wasn't ready to retire.
You're not ready? You're not dead yet.
You're not dead yet. When you talk about restoration, in Western medicine, for instance, they say if you've been a smoker and you quit, you have to have quit the same number of years that you have smoked before you actually start to restore the damage you've done.
That's plausible. Not true. Right? And why isn't it true?
It typically takes the human body anywhere from, depending on the age of when you quit. If you quit before the age of 35, it takes 3 to 5 years for your lungs to completely filter out all of the tar. If you quit beyond the age of 35, it can take anywhere from 5 to 8 years. And it also depends on the environment in which you're surrounded by, the type of pesticides, what type of furnace you have. I mean, it depends on everything in your environment, as well as how you continue to live and how you detox your body from the point of quitting further.
Yep. So, now.
That was to lead up to my question.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't smoke. And you talked about restoring.
Yes.
And I started late in life with the Tai Chi and the
Yep.
Qigong. So is there a set period of time before you start to see the results of your restoration? Or does it just depend on each individual person at a different rate?
That's awesome. Okay. Firstly, here's the good news, people. It can happen immediately. It can happen now. So it's not based on time. It's based on presence and consciousness. So, you understand, it's really not a destination. It's the state of mind brought on by the journey. So, even if you're really bad at Tai Chi and you're not Mr. Mountain, but you're digging it, you're present, there's no inner conflict, you're feeling the love, hopefully you'll die right then. Did you see it? Because you're good. It's instant. So the key is staying in it. You see it? So it's instant and it's now. So even, that's why I said, who cares how good you are at it? In trying to do it, identify this consciousness of, all right, no, I get this, and sure, I'm going to quiet the mind. And you know what? That's all good medicine. So just the contemplation of the I amness in that moment, and then the quieting of the mind through whatever skillful means, even if you're not good at calligraphy, who cares? You see it? Let me give a closing story. One of my teachers shared about a Buddhist monk who trained with Buddha. And there was two brothers. And one was an amazing scholar. And he learned it all. He knew all the mantras, all the chants. He did everything. He was amazing. The other brother, not so much. His job was to sweep the temple. And his mantra was sweep the temple clean. Sweep the temple clean. Because he couldn't remember anything. You know, and so Buddha comes by one day and says, hey, how's that mantra going? Well, it was something about sweep. Something to do with sweep. He couldn't even remember to sweep the temple clean. He was a wreck. So Buddha said, how about this? Work with me. Sweep. Just think sweep. Just think sweep. Well, he had one language mantra, and he reached enlightenment. His brother didn't. And he had all the tools, the bells, the whistles, the incense, the hat, the Dakota ring. And there's his other brother stumbling around saying, sweet, sweet. But the presence of mind, the simpleness of just being there, simple, clear, clean, no turbidity, no perplexities, nothing, just now, just me. That's really it. It's in the moment. It's not tomorrow, it's now. So it's called holding. If you can hold that space, you're good. If it happens today, you're good. Does that answer the question? You know, some people get better at it as time goes because they're not dead yet. They're still doing it. So it's like, well, been cultivating for a long time, check out all this stuff. But that's a byproduct. That's why you'll see some traditions, they'll make this amazing picture out of sand. It's like, check, oh, and then they get rid of it. Well, what did you do? Well, we don't care. It was the clarity of mind brought on by making the sand picture. So, you know, it's not so much outcome, it's process. It's about having a process in which you can cultivate presence. So on that happy note, hey, firstly, I've taught this for a long time. Normally I don't go this far down the rabbit hole. By virtue of the people that are here and what we're trying to do, I think it's amazing that you can come here, sit down and listen to all of this stuff and not explode. So, congratulations. Good job.